welcome back to the Shoogly shed. As you saw last time, we got the engine on the GS500 started for the first time. That was really exciting. I've since ironed out a couple of little gremlins and it seems to be running pretty nicely now. And yeah, I mean, one of the big things was the oil pressure light wouldn't go out, and that's like, you know, a nightmare material for an engine rebuild. That kind of means that the oil pressure in the engine isn't correct and there could be something major wrong, or you could even cause major engine damage. So that didn't make me feel great, but I soon narrowed it down to a faulty oil pressure switch, and that was a huge sigh of relief because that would have been an absolute nightmare otherwise. So I'm pretty pleased about that. Aside from that, bike's running really nicely. It just needs bedded in, obviously. There's a few heat cycles and then some gentle rides when I can. But I mean, aside from that, we are kind of on the home straight, and the big job next for me to tackle is the tank, the bodywork involved. So we're talking filling, sanding, filling, spraying the petrol tank. This is the petrol tank I have. I think I maybe showed you it in an episode a wee while ago. I had two tanks and this seems to be the best of the bunch. This one, I think someone's resprayed it in the past and didn't dry it properly between wet sanding. So there's little like pockets of, I mean they're little pockets of like corrosion almost, just little bits of oxidization or something under there. It's a bit of a weird, it almost looks intentional, but it's not. So this will need fully stripped anyway because I'm going to spray it. This tank is actually from the newer models of GS500, so actually the newer version than what this one was. So the tanks on these ones are a bit bigger, they're wider. However, they had this sort of wraparound seat. The seat came to here and then wrapped around these sort of indentations in the tank. And although that works quite nicely for obviously the original seat and stuff, it doesn't work quite so well for my seat, which just sort of butts up directly against the tank here. So my plan is to try and use some body filler to fill the indentations along the sides of the tank to bring these out. It could go disastrously wrong. It is a lot of filler, so I haven't really done much filler work before, so I'm kind of dropping myself in at the deep end. Usually one of my bugbears about people putting these tanks on with custom seats is that this section never looks great, so I would like to do a better job, hopefully. So that's kind of my plan for today, is to start prepping the tank and getting some filler into there. It'll need to be multiple layers, so we'll need to get a few layers on and let them set and dry before we get anything else added on. So because it is some heavy duty filling I'm doing, we're going for this fiberglass reinforced filler. This is basically going to be the substantial portion or the bulk of the filler, and then I'll use some finer finishing filler over the top before I blend it all in and before I spray it. There are a few other small dents and depressions in the tank that will need a little bit of filler work before it gets its final coat and that kind of thing, but it's actually overall in not too bad structural condition, so that should make my job a little bit easier. I don't have to worry about the rest of the tank. It is just these portions here that are going to prove a bit of a challenge, I think. In the past, I've sanded the paint off of tanks before spraying them. However, it takes a long time, and you don't want to use too rough a grit or you'll take too much metal off when you get through the paint. So I have invested in one of these. These come on good recommendation for this sort of thing. It's an attachment for the angle grinder, as you can see, and it's basically this big kind of scouter is maybe the right word, or sort of Scott Bright, but it's much denser, so it's a bit more aggressive. And apparently these are amazing for prepping metal, so taking off paint and that sort of thing without taking any of the metal off. So I'm going to tentatively have a go with this. God damn, that thing's effective. I did actually get a piece of sheet metal and really press down really hard with it for about 30 seconds, and although it made a very slight depression, it didn't go through it, so I was pretty confident to use it on this relatively, well, much thicker material than what I tested. So yeah, it just toasts the paint, but it leaves the metal nice and smooth, so I recommend those things. I'm not entirely sure what you call them, metal prep disc, something like that. Anyway, I've pretty much stripped back the areas that I want to fill to bare metal, because you get better adhesion to the filler, and I'm probably going to strip most of the tank anyway. So I don't want to strip the rest of it just yet, because it's liable to corrode. I'm not sure when I'll get around to painting it properly, especially I don't know how long this filler work's going to take, so I'm just going to leave this protected right now, and then I'll strip it all and give it all a final sand and prime before I paint it. So first thing to do is to, I guess, mix up some filler and start whacking it on. I don't really know. I don't think there's, I mean, I might give this a wee degrease because it's a bit dusty, but aside from that, I think just start whacking filler on and see where that takes us. So it's a couple of hours since we put the fiberglass on, and it's rock solid now. So I'm pretty happy with that profile, to be honest. It's a little bit proud, and it looks a bit funny from here, but it's a little bit proud, and that basically means I can sculpt it as I sort of sand it back down, and before I do a final filler layer to blend it into the rest of the metal. But as far as bringing out that sort of seat recess, I think that's been pretty successful, and hopefully once it's all sanded in and painted, that contour will be one continuous smooth line. So yeah, that's a good result. Well, I'm pretty happy with that. That looks good. We've got the fiberglass sort of bringing that contour, as you can see here, bringing it round smoothly, evens off that nicely. It has started raining, in case you haven't noticed, but I'm going to basically probably go into the shed and put a little bit of actual body filler onto this and let it harden overnight, and then do some sanding either tomorrow or the day after, whenever I get a chance. And then the whole thing needs sanded really, and some primer before we go to paint. Okay, we now have a pretty generous layer of sort of final body filler over the whole shape there. The reason I've done quite a thick layer, that I'm just going to let it harden overnight, and then I'll be able to sort of contour it and smooth it into this main panel and the sort of back of the tank here. This stuff is two-part, so it's like the fiberglass, but it doesn't have fiberglass in it obviously, but it's a little bit finer, so you can sand it right down to like a really smooth finish. That way when you prime the tank, you won't be able to see where this works, you know, begins and where it ends. It'll just be sort of one smooth transition. At least that's the theory. I'm not a bodywork technician. I have done nothing like this before, absolutely nothing. So this is a learning curve, as they say, and much like a lot of things on this bike, hopefully it will look good in the end. So unless people are mad psyched for more time lapses of me sanding, I'm probably going to do all this off camera, just get the finishing done, sand it all down, sand the rest of the tank as well. There's a couple of wee dents and things to fill, and then I will pick this back up with you when we get to priming and paint, and that could be a cool episode, I hope. I have some new techniques to try that I've never done before, so we'll see how we get on. Anyway, as usual, give me a like, leave me a comment, and please do subscribe to the Shoogly Shed channel. I really appreciate it. Slowly building up the numbers, and it's really cool to see so many people excited and interested in, like I say, what I do in my tiny shed. So thank you very much for that. I'll see you later. Bye. When you're sort of straddling it, it feels pretty big and beefy. It's lovely. However, when you're sort of straddling it, it feels pretty big and beefy. It's lovely. However...